This video will show you how to replace the front sealed wheel bearing on a Chevy Malibu. This is part of the front steering and suspension located behind the front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we do is safely raise and support the front end of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground and we'll have the suspension hanging. Now once you've done that, you're going to remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, let's pay attention directly in the center of where our brake rotor is and we'll remove our axle nut. To remove the axle nut, we'll be using a 32mm socket. Let's go ahead and turn this counterclockwise. A quick note about removing the axle nut. If you find when you're attempting to loosen or tighten the axle nut, it wants to spin on you, you can either have a second person holding on the brake pedal or you could carefully use a pry bar directly down towards the ground in between your studs, being careful not to cause any damage, preventing this from turning. We'll use some penetrant in this area. Continue on with a hammer and punch. As far as the punch is concerned, you're going directly in the center of the axle. We're going to start tapping on this to break the axle free from our wheel bearing hub. We do not want to use the hammer on the axle, which could potentially cause damage. Now that I do have movement from here, let's continue on. So now that we have the axle broken free, we're moving along to removing the caliper. Since we're only replacing the bearing, we can dislodge the entire caliper with the bracket. We'll make our way along the backside for this. Now when we go to remove the caliper, we do want to make sure we hang it in some way that's not going to cause an issue with the flex hose, so I just have a small hook. I'm hanging that on my coil spring. Now with that said, we can start removing our caliper bracket mounting bolts. Looking along the backside, you're going to find you have 2 21mm bolts. There's one up here, one directly below it. I'm going to fully remove the first one, give it a quick inspection, start it back in a couple threads. We'll continue on to the second. There's that bolt. By leaving this in, it's going to prevent the caliper from falling down on us while we continue on. Second mounting bolt looks good. Both of these bolts will look the same. You do not need to worry about mixing them up. Let's hold on to the caliper. We're going to carefully pull this away from the brake rotor. Now you may find the caliper will not slide out of place. That's typically due to the brake pads holding onto your brake rotor. We can carefully push back our caliper piston. I'm just using a small pry bar. I'm going in between the caliper and my brake rotor and gently prying out. We only need to go out far enough that we can slide this caliper out of place. Now every time I dislodge a caliper, I always like to inspect my brake pads while I have it apart. Make sure they're not worn at an angle or damaged in any way. These look fine, so I'm going to set them aside. As I mentioned, I'm going to be hanging my hook directly up on top of my coil on my front strut. Now we'll start removing our brake rotor. You may find that you have a T30 torque screw holding the rotor in place to our wheel bearing hub. I'm going to use a small impact driver here. We'll get this in place. I'm going to be turning this counterclockwise while I tap on the far end here. Now that I have it broken free, I can fully remove that. While we remove this, let's make sure we're holding onto our brake rotor so it does not fall off. There's our mounting bolt. Just a quick inspection of this. You typically will want to reuse this. Let's go ahead and remove that brake rotor. A thorough inspection of that. We will be cleaning this prior to installation. For now, let's set it aside. That exposes our front wheel bearing. Now we will have to make our way along the back side of the knuckle to remove our 3 pieces of hardware, but along the forward side here, we'll use some penetrant. You can see where the bolts protrude through. Now let's make our way along the back side of the knuckle. So as I'm looking along the back side here, I can see my 2 lower mounting bolts. There's a third mounting bolt directly in the center on the top. All three of these bolts will look the same. Use a 15 millimeter. And there's one mounting bolt. Let's continue on. Second mounting bolt. Let's make our way up to the top. Get our top bolt up here. As we remove this, we're being extremely careful not to cause any damage to our axle CV boot. As we continue removing this, keep in mind this is the last thing holding your front wheel bearing and backing plate in place. The bearing may be stuck to the knuckle or it might slide right out. Be aware. There's that mounting bolt. Let's move along to the outboard side. Now, as we move along to the outboard side here, as I mentioned, the bearing might be stuck to the knuckle. The bearing is also holding the backing plate in place. It's common to have to carefully tap with a hammer on the bearing itself. When doing so, let's be extremely careful not to cause any damage to anything else, possibly the backing plate, ABS wire, anything the like. I have movement from the backing plate and the bearing, so I'm going to carefully start pulling this out and away. Now we should be able to slide the backing plate off of the back of the bearing. A quick inspection of that, we'll clean it. For now, set it aside. And there it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new part, we need to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. On this application, we're paying attention to our steering knuckle. If you look inside the circular port here, we want to make sure we remove any miscellaneous debris. When doing so, pay attention along the rearward side of the knuckle, where your ABS sensor would be. We need to make sure it's not damaged. When cleaning this, we're also going to clean along the outboard side here, where the bearing presses against, and we might as well also clean our axle shaft. I have a collection receptacle under here. We'll use some parts cleaner and a wire brush. Double check the sensor. We do not want to have an ABS light. It's not damaged in any way. Once I have it cleaned, I always like to use a little bit of anti-seize. The areas that we're going to use anti-seize would be inside of the circular port. We're going to go on the splined area of the axle. We do not need any anti-seize on or around the ABS wheel speed sensor. Try to avoid that. I don't need very much here. Splines. Now let's pay attention to our backing plate. The areas that we want to focus is where we can see where the bearing would sit. Let's make sure it's clean and free of any debris. The next thing we'll want to do is clean and inspect our bearing mounting bolts. Once you've cleaned the threads, I like to use some red thread locker. Let's prepare to install our brand new front wheel bearing. When we do this, have a quick look along the back side. You can see that there's a magnetic strip. Confirm there's no miscellaneous debris stuck in this area. Once we've done that, we'll take our backing plate. We're going to slide it in position. Make sure you can see the port where the caliper bracket needs to be. As for the bearing, we just need to slide this into position, aligning the mounting bolt ports. And then from the back side, we can start installing those mounting bolts. As we start in these mounting bolts, we are only starting them in. Once all of them have been started, we can snug them up and torque them to 74 foot-pounds. Prior to installing our brake rotor, we're going to start with some anti-seize on the hub mating surface. Now, if you're looking at this hub, you're going to find that you have raised areas, one along the circular center and one along the outboard side here. That's the area that we're going to apply the anti-seize. You're also going to find that you have two small ports. We can add anti-seize to these as well. Now, as I mentioned, we need to clean the rotor prior to installation. We're looking along the inboard side. This is where it would be directly against our brand new wheel bearing hub. As you can tell, we need to make sure we clean this mounting surface so we don't have a brake pulsation. For this, you can use a wire brush, a sanding disc, whatever you might happen to have. A couple light taps to confirm there's no debris stuck in any of the cooling fins, and we can get this over to the vehicle. For good measure, we'll just use some parts cleaner on our braking surfaces. Now we can slide this into place. Now that I have this slid on, as you remember, we had one mounting bolt that we had to remove. Let's go ahead and install that now. We already have copper anti-seize in the port. We'll start that in, snug it up. Now, as we bring our caliper into place, we need to pay attention to our brake flex hose. It's possible that when you hung your caliper and you brought it back down, it got twisted in some way. We want to make sure the brake fluid is not going to be restricted. We'll slide this into position. We'll continue on along the backside with our two mounting bolts. Along the backside, we're starting in each of our two mounting bolts. We'll snug them up. The torque for these will be 111 foot-pounds. Now that we're sure that the caliper's torqued and in place, let's make our way to the axle nut next on the outboard side. Now it's time to reinstall our axle nut. A note about this is when you install it, you can only use a hand tool. Do not use an impact tool, which could cause damage to your bearing. To help prevent this from turning while we continue on, I'm down close to the ground. I'm using a pry bar carefully diagonally across my lug studs, being aware not to cause any damage. This will prevent this from turning. Install your axle nut. When we go to install this, we're going to bottom it out. We'll torque it to 111 foot-pounds. After that, we're going to loosen it a quarter turn and then re-torque it to 185 foot-pounds. $185. Now one last quick inspection and we can reinstall our wheel. We're going to get the wheel in place. Once we have it up there, go ahead and start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. We're going to bottom them out in a crisscross manner. We'll get the wheel back on the ground and we can torque each lug nut to 100 foot-pounds. Now I have the wheel safely on the ground. We're going to torque these to that 100 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Okay friend, we showed you the installation of your front wheel bearing assembly. Now the next thing you need to do is hop in the passenger compartment. Pump up the brake pedal till it's nice and firm. After that, you want to take your vehicle for a road test, listen for any odd noises, and make sure you don't have any ABS light. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.